So today is for day 2 of shop management. First of all, I hope everyone's hanging out pretty good with their quarantine and enjoying their time at home and hopefully not going too stir crazy. For those of you that might still have jobs that have you coming into work, stay safe. I hope everything's going good there. So today we're going to talk a little bit about customers. Customers are the lifeblood of a repair facility. They're what keeps us going. Without customers, we don't come into work every day. That being said, a lot of times customers are also the number one thing we complain about. You ask most techs what their biggest problem is, it's their customers. So we have to have an understanding of what type of customers we're dealing with. Do they like more explanation, less explanation? Do they like a quick transaction, a slower transaction? All different things that go in. We're going to jump into that in the next lesson. Quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Because you have to be able to identify what type of customer you have so you know how to sell to them. Don't get it mixed up. I know you're here to repair cars. You are in sales. Whether you're sweeping the floor in the shop, whether you're doing oil changes, whether you're doing alignments, whether you're the foreman, whether you're doing diag, whether you're doing service writing, whether you're managing, whether you own the dealership or the facility or the fleet, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're in sales, and you have to understand that right up front. So why is that important? Because the number one thing I've heard from students over the years and different guys I've worked with are, you know what, I'm going to leave being a tech, or I'm going to leave this because I don't want to have a boss anymore. I want to be my own boss. Sounds great. But I got to be honest with you. Most of the time, if you go to a repair facility and you go and open up your own business, all you've done is trade one boss, your foreman, your manager, your writer, and you've gained 1,000 bosses. Now, real quick, I really should review one thing here. Let's go over the hierarchy of where things work in a repair facility. Generally speaking, when you start at a repair facility, you'll be either a Class C tech, sometimes they call it D, or lube tech or entry-level tech, oil changes, getting things for the higher level mechanics, preventive maintenance inspections, pre-delivery inspection, things like that. Once you get some experience under your belt and you start beating the flat rate time, meaning if a job pays 2 hours in the book, you're getting it done in an hour and a half. Once that starts happening and you don't have comebacks, so you're getting the job done quickly and correctly, and that's starting to happen regularly. It's not a once in an occasion. This is how your normal day is going. Then what's going to happen is they're going to move you up from a C to a B. Most of your B techs are going to handle shocks, struts, alignment, steering issues, maybe some basic engine removal, or not engine removal, I'm sorry, basic component removal. Brake jobs are a big thing for a B-level tech. Basic electrical, battery starter, alternator, light bulbs, blower motors, things like that. Maybe AC services. A lot of your kind of normal day-to-day stuff is going to be in the B level. As you start getting more certifications, whether it be ASE or a manufacturer credential, you're really beating book time pretty much all the time now, and your comebacks are very, very low. Nobody's going to have zero. You're not going to be perfect. You're human. And sometimes you did everything right, and what you did was you fixed symptoms of another problem, not realizing it. And now the real problem reared its head later. You're going to have some comebacks, but if you have them minimized so that they're very rare, what's going to happen is your manager is going to want to move you up to an A-level tech or a heavy line tech. Usually you're doing a lot of diagnostic work, a lot of scan tool, a lot of oscilloscope, scan tool primarily. You're getting the jobs that honestly, when you're a B-level tech, you get a break job. You get a lot of jobs that, quite frankly, you can beat the book. I don't want to say easily on, but you ought to be beating the book on. When you're an A-level tech, you're getting the stuff that's not easy to fix because the problem won't go away, or they've done everything that the book tells them to do, and it doesn't fix the problem. So a lot of times an A-level tech, honestly, isn't beating the book time because it is a more in-depth diag. They're compensated for that. Now, if you stay in the field and you want to move past A-level tech, usually there's one of a couple directions you can go. You might go to being a foreman. Usually, if you're a foreman, you're going to be responsible for either the entire shop or a couple of teams of techs, depending on how big the shop is and kind of all that. Your job is to make sure that the new guys get acclimated, get productive, get working, to make sure we don't make stupid mistakes that are going to turn into comebacks, to make sure that all the policies and procedures of the shop are being followed. And when any of the guys in your responsibility hit a wall, they don't know what else to do, you are there to help them through it. And then obviously from there, you could go to a service manager. Now the other direction is you can go to a writer. The writer is supposed to be the tech's teammate. The writer is supposed to be the one who's interacting with the customer and can act like a translator. They can figure out what the customer is complaining about and put it in the terms so that you as a tech know where to start looking. And they can take your diagnostic, your notes, your info, and start making them fit something that a customer can understand. And so that the customer will buy whatever work you're recommending. A good service writer is going to know how to identify what type of customer they have in front of them and what's going to work to sell to that customer. Now, if you work at a Pep Boys, a Mavis, an independent facility, a lot of times what might happen is somebody calls out. Or a situation, now is extraordinary, but something like with Corona where to save money, places are cutting back on the amount of workers they have in on any given day. To do that, they're having less people in. And so now, yes, you're a tech, but you may find yourself having to go up to the desk and help with phone calls or help with writing up customers. So there are some things that you need to be aware of, even though you're a tech, so that you know how to write up a customer, how to sell to a customer, how to work with a customer. On top of that, you have to be paying attention as a tech to see if what you're recommending is being sold. I said it a couple seconds ago. The service writer and the tech are supposed to be a team. They're supposed to be working hand in hand. But there are a ton of places and a ton of circumstances where the service writer is just worried about selling. without any regard for what the tech is recommending. And if the customer doesn't buy what the tech's recommending, they're trying to sell whatever the company is putting an incentive on. If you're not paying attention, where you can eventually go to a manager later and explain, hey, my service writer isn't working with me, I'm recommending X, Y, and Z, and that's why I'm not making hours. You only know that by knowing how to pay attention to the work order, noting what you're recommending, and watching what's being sold. Nobody is going to look at that for you. It's the sad nature of the world. You have to make sure you're getting paid, your work is being sold, and that you are being taken care of. And ultimately, if you move up to being a writer, you make your bonuses off how your techs are doing. So knowing how to sell the work, knowing how to distribute the work, knowing how to get things set up so that your customers feel good and keep coming back, especially if they get comfortable enough where they will call you specifically as a writer or a tech, that's how you have long-term wealth in this industry. So now, foreman or writer, your next step would be a service manager. A small place, 3 or 4 bays, probably only has 1, maybe 2 service managers, just to handle days off and things like that. Usually an assistant service manager, kind of like a foreman, and a service manager. The service manager's real job is to make sure that all of his techs are doing whatever training he assigns. That way the service manager can make sure that all of his or her techs are growing, are moving up, because it's a lot cheaper to hire an entry-level tech than it is an A-level tech. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into personnel and hiring and firing, but hiring that entry-level tech is what you want to do. You don't want to have to hire an A-level tech. So you need everybody to keep training and keep moving up. What you also need, you need to make sure that work is being done, that most of your techs are being productive, meaning they are booking more hours than what they're physically in the building. You also need to make sure that everything that's going through for warranty is right. You got to remember, warranty still has to be paid by somebody. The dealership that you work at is not owned by Ford. It's not owned by Honda. It's owned by Joe Smith, Mr. Fallows, whoever. The manufacturer has to pay that dealer owner for any warranty work. But the manufacturer's main goal is going to be to prove why they are not responsible to pay for that. So you as a service manager have the primary job of making sure anything your techs are going to claim as a warranty repair is accurate. You're also going to handle payroll. You're also going to handle things like parts ordering, particularly consumables, things like oil filters, stuff like that. Regular use items. You're going to keep an eye on your specialty tools, tire machines, scan tools, the lifts. You're going to make sure that they all work and that they're safe. You're going to make sure your techs didn't rig anything. One of the things we know for a fact is techs are great at fixing stuff. They're also great at rigging it so that they can get their job done as quickly as possible. A certain amount of rigging is not safe. So a service manager has a lot on their plate, and he or she then has to report to usually a service and parts director, or some places will call it a fixed operations director. that fixed operations director, their primary job is going to be to oversee both parts and service. Are you hitting your sales quota? Usually every department's going to have a certain number it has to reach in terms of sales. And then they're going to drill down with their managers to see how's this shift or group of people doing, how's that team doing, are trainings getting done. And then they're also going to keep an eye on special projects. Maybe a shop is being expanded, or maybe they're updating their bays, changing out old lifts for new lifts. All of those projects kind of are going to fall under a service and parts director. That director, that fixed operations director, is going to be responsible to a general manager. Or if it's like a Mavis, a Pep Boys, they're going to be responsible to a store manager who's going to be responsible to a regional manager. So that's kind of a very quick rundown. It really ought to be a review because you should have talked about this in intro class. But I'm going to be throwing terms around like writer and foreman, and I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. Now, looking at this with customers, especially if you read the chapter in the book, you're going to have some shops that talk about a good customer and talk about a bad customer. The problem is a lot of places think that a good customer is the one who comes in, spends the money, and gets out. You don't know. The customer who comes in every month because they got a coupon in the mail for a $20 oil change is not a good customer. A good customer is a customer who every time they leave your shop, they feel good. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be happy that you just had them drop $1,100 worth of work. Especially since if you go to a store, if you go to the Apple store and you spend $1,300 on a new computer, you get to bring the computer home and play with it. If you spend it on a new camera or a new stereo, you see that right away. You spend $1,100 in preventive maintenance because your car needed a timing belt, it needed a water pump, it needed a coolant flush. There's nothing to see. There's nothing to feel good about. There's nothing that feels different. So it's hard to ask a customer to spend that. And it's hard for them to feel good about it. So what's going to make them feel good? What's going to make that customer experience? Well, it's going to be the relationship. People trust their tech. Once they develop a relationship with you, they will travel to keep using you. They will find your personal number to keep using you. They don't want to go anywhere else because, one of the things you got to think about, when somebody gets into a car accident, when there's a fender bender, they don't say, man, somebody hit my car. The first words out of their mouth are, somebody hit me. See, people's cars, and I don't care if it's a $500 car or a $50,000 car, doesn't matter. People view their car as an extension of themselves. It's right up there with their home. It's a lot of money. And some people are actually going to spend more time in their car than their home, between commuting from work, getting kids, doing what they need to do. They eat in their car. For the first time ever in the last couple months, I've been having to do work out of my truck, take phone calls as I'm driving, and handle different things, especially now with this. So my truck that I drive every day is not only what I use for my vacations to go camping, it's an office where I take phone calls. It's part of my living room because I talk to my kids in it and we go over their day, and it's an extension of my home and my life. So you have to be aware of that. A customer is going to come in to your facility, and you're going to tell them they need to spend money to do some type of operation on a vehicle. They don't really understand what you're saying to do. To you, it sounds very simple. And if it doesn't yet, it will. I know some of you guys are still pretty new, but some of you have been here for quite a while. We might talk about, resetting the steering angle sensor or resetting the TPMS module so that it reads the correct tire pressures. To us, that's nothing. That's a simple procedure. To a customer who knows nothing about automotive, all they heard were a lot of big words. And a lot of big words that you said you want to do on that vehicle that is an extension of themselves. And they're seeing people dirty, greasy, working. They're hearing air tools. They're hearing noises. They might even hear a little bit of foul language coming from the bays. So now they're getting real hesitant about how your facility is going to handle their baby. So you have to understand that there's this level of anxiety for a customer. Stuff that we think of as simple, it's an easy, come on, why aren't you just saying let's do this? The customer is looking at, I don't understand what you want me to spend this amount of money, $50, $100, $1,100 to do. Especially since I'm not going to see anything different other than maybe a light out on my dashboard. Why is this important? Because how you interact with the customer is going to be the biggest single thing that's going to put them at ease. It's going to be the biggest single thing that's going to make them feel a little bit better about spending the money with you. That's why we hammer you on professionalism. That's why we hammer you on uniform. That's why we tell you to watch language. Because you want to build habits that let you work with the customer. I know when I was managing a tire shop for Mavis, very often I did not call customers up to the desk. I went out, I crouched next to them. It made them feel like we were talking together. It wasn't this power of I'm behind the desk. Because you got to remember, how do most customers feel when they come into a repair facility? That's right. They think we're going to take advantage of them. They think that we're all out just for their dollar. I needed to make my customers believe I was there trying to keep them safe. And that's what you need to make your customers believe too. Ultimately, you're like a doctor. The problem is there's a lot of people who have done our profession over the years who've been bad doctors. They have taken advantage. And so now we all have that reputation. So a lot of customers are going to have a lot of anxiety when they come into you. Also, you're going to hear a lot of customers talk about every time they have to come into a repair facility, it's a lot of money. It is. You have to have some empathy for that. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to get into the different types of customers and how we sell to each type of customer. This lesson was primarily focused on just understanding the customer is your boss. The difference between a good customer and a bad customer is how they feel when they leave you. A good customer is going to leave you feeling like it was a good experience. They're going to leave you feeling like they got the most out of their money. A bad customer is going to leave you and they may not say a word to you, but they're going to tell 10 of their friends never to see you. Because they feel like they wasted their time, they feel like they wasted their money, they feel like their vehicle, their extension of themselves was not cared for properly. Or worse yet, it was violated. I had a graduate maybe about 2 years back, went to work at a dealership. He got fired because the dealership found that when he was test driving the cars, he was taking them through a drive-through window and smoking in them. treating the customer's car like it was his own. No. There are customers that will purposely leave money out just to see if you take it. There are customers who the very first thing they do when they get in their car, they're going to check their radio, because if you change their radio station, and here's the thing, you weren't working on their radio, or even in the vicinity of, like you were doing an oil change, they're going to immediately assume you mishandled their vehicle. So the bad customer is the one that walks away with a bad taste in their mouth. The good customer is the one who's going to keep coming back to you because you're building the relationship. You're helping them get rid of their anxiety. You're helping them move on from that. Okay. That's how you get the customer to spend some money with you. And to be honest with you, not just spend some money, but to keep coming back. Because really, that's how we make money in this field. It's not about how much the customer spends with you today. It's about building a relationship so that they come back next month, and the month after, and the month after, and the month after. That's how you keep the doors, the bay doors open. Somebody coming in and spending $10,000 today is worth nothing if you don't see them again for another year. It just isn't. Because that money will evaporate before you even know it. You need a customer who trusts you, who's willing to come in and willing to spend that money repeatedly. That's the good customer. Okay, so the next lesson we're going to talk a little bit about Quadrant 1, Quadrant 2, Quadrant 3, and how you sell to those individual quadrants. That's going to pretty much wrap up the lectures about specific type of customers and selling. Then what we're going to start touching on is the work order and how the work order operates and what we need to talk about in regards to that.